What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be going over a new deck list, but before we go into that, obviously we're all excited for the launch and the official release of Star Wars Unlimited. It's right around the corner, and obviously I cannot hold in my excitement really. But before we do any of the deck list stuff, I do want to thank all of you guys for all the support recently. When the game is officially announced, we're gonna have a ton of new type of content on the channel, including live matches, pack openings, and we're gonna have some streams with pack openings that are gonna also have giveaways of packs to you guys who watch, just really as an appreciation from me to you guys for all the support lately. It's greatly appreciative. It's been a blast making these videos, and I'm going to keep on doing it. We are going to keep on having decklist videos, but also a new type of decklist video that we're going to be doing as well, which we're going to start with today and kind of go into it in a little bit when we go over the leader and stuff like that. But again, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys and get excited for the release of Star Wars Unlimited because it's right there this Friday. As you guys know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday this week, most of us are going to have our pre-release events to go over, and I am going to probably go over the deck that I made during my pre-release, and also I'm probably going to do some live pre-release coverage as well, so get excited for that. But without further ado, again, thank you for everything, and I'm going to get right into the deck list here. We're going to be making a Sabine deck, but what's making this a little bit different than our normal videos is that this is going to be a budget Sabine deck. I do want to make some budget deck lists for those who don't want to go out and try to get all these rares and legendary cards. So we're going to do some budget decks. We will probably have a normal Sabine deck coming out later on this channel. But for right now, I want to do a budget Sabine deck because this is probably going to be one of those leaders that people really want to go out and get. If you guys prefer the other type of decks, let me know. But I think that budget decks can be fun to go over in their own right? So let's start off with the leader. Obviously, as we all know, Sabine, really good. For an action, deals 1 damage to each base, the player's own and the opponent's base. So it's a good way to start getting damage off every single turn. It's free damage, very easy to do. And then her epic action only requires you to control 4 resources, which makes it really good because she gets out as quickly as possible. And then on attack, deal 1 damage to each enemy base, which is really good. You're no longer doing damage to yourself, you're doing damage just to the opponent when you attack, which is just extra 1 damage every single turn, which is just really good. Again, it's not really much more to talk about with Sabine. You guys all know what she does. She is just really fast and really aggressive. So let's go ahead and talk about the base and why I chose it. I went with command when I'm making my budget Sabine deck. Mainly because you don't want to play double aggression, which I would normally play double aggression with Sabine. But when it comes to the base for when you're doing budget, one, you can't play the legendary bases, well, the rare bases. And there's no reason to play double aggression, so I went with command, and I'll go over the reason why in a little bit, but it's just some command center, 30 HP base, nothing crazy special. And you guys know how we do it on this channel. We go over our units in the deck list, we go over what we're going to replace, where in budget deck list, I'm just going to go over the rare and legendary cards that I would kind of replace in this deck, or just put into this deck, not really what they would replace, but what I would put in, which is actually going to, for the first time, include a different base. Which is kind of cool, I feel like. It's just, we have our budget deck list, then we have the replacements, and then we're going to go ahead and have our force table practice match and our demo. So we're still going to keep that the same, but we're going to go into our ground units. We play a lot of ground units, but it's kind of normal for a Sabine deck. We are still going to go full on aggression with our ground units and pretty much with our units in general. We still want to keep the aggression synergy within the deck. So let's go ahead and go over our ground units here. We have, to start off, Spec Force Soldier. No different than normal. It's just a good 1-drop. When played, a unit loses Sentinel for this phase. It's a good way to get rid of Sentinel, especially late game if you want to get a bunch of damage on. The deck still functions as you want to get as many units on the board and try to provide pressure, attacking a bunch of times, and uses Sabine's ability to deal out that extra 1 damage each turn. So it's going to be the same type of deck. It's just not going to have those rare and legendary cards. So Spec Force Soldier is a normal card for Sabine, so we're keeping it in here out of 3 of. We have 2 tubes here, the Partisan's Lieutenant. Just really good. On attack, another friendly unit gets raid 2. It's a normal deck for normal card for a Sabine deck. It's just, again, when it attacks, you make another one of your aggression units stronger. Keep it simple. It's really good. It keeps up that pressure and that speed of the deck. Our next unit here, it's the Cantina Braggart. It's not like crazy, but it does get raid 2. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of the card, but again, it's a budget deck, so I slotted it in here at a 2 of, is because it has 0 attack normally. So people are not afraid to attack into it. But again, it can be a pretty good distraction to get your opponents not to attack your base, and then allowing your other units to attack their base and keeping up that speed. But it does have raid 2, so when it does attack, it does have 2 damage. So it is not too bad, especially at a 1 cost. It's not too bad, and at a 2 of in the deck, it could be worse. Sabine Wren, we all know what this card does. I am not playing any other aspects, so the first ability of it is not going to be used in this deck, but we all know while there are 3 or more, at least 3 aspects among your other units, it can't be targeted for an attack, which is pretty good. But on attack, you may deal 1 damage to the defender or the base. So it's just, again, dealing that extra damage to the base on attacks. So it's just pretty good. The next unit we're going to be going over is the Partisan Insurgent. Again, another staple in a Sabine deck. When you control another aggression unit, this unit gains raid 2, which is another way to make it strong. So 2 cost. It also has 4 HP, which is pretty good. So again, it's a good thing it's a common because it's pretty solid in this deck. We have our Agitator here. It is Saboteur, so we don't have to worry about Sentinel. And on attack, if you control a leader unit, which is easy to do in a Sabine deck early, it deals 2 damage to a ground unit or a base. So there's extra damage around the board or at the base. Probably in this deck, you're going to be focusing on the base, so it's just more damage on the base. Next, we have Fighters for Freedom. It has Saboteur again. So this deck actually has a lot of ways to get around Sentinels, which is pretty good. But when you play another aggression card, you may deal 1 damage to a base. Again, more consistent pressure on your opponent's base is kind of the theme with this deck, even in the budget form of it. Next, we have Fleet Lieutenant. It's just, when played, you may attack with a rebel unit. It gets +2/+0. We all know what it does. We have a pretty good amount of rebel units, so I felt like it kind of had a place in this deck. We have our Sympathizer here. While you control the initiative, which doesn't happen quite often in this deck, really, but it can. And when you control the initiative, it gets +2/+0. So not too bad. If you have initiative, it gets to do 5 damage. So that's just really strong for a 3-cost unit. Pretty good in the deck. And then I play only 1 of Gorilla Attack Pod. It has Grit, which is pretty good. And when there's 15 or more damage on a base, it comes in readied. So in this deck, you're going to be doing a ton of damage. So having 15 damage on a base and dropping this down late game to get in that extra swing, or if it's like the last little bit and your opponent thinks that they're safe and they can live, you can drop this down and get off the final hit on a base, which is pretty fun to do. So this is, I only have it as a 1 of. It's kind of like that last resort type of thing. I could raise it up to a 2 of in a budget deck, but I decided to keep it as a 1 of. It just is kind of that finishing touch if you really need it. So that's going to do it for our ground units. We're going to go ahead and hop into our space units. We only play 8 of them, but we have a staple staying on with it because it is a common. We have our Green Squadron A-Wing. You guys know what it does. It just gives raid 2, nothing too crazy, but being able to do 3 damage from space, if your opponent doesn't deal with it, it's just extra 3 damage over and over again in space, so it's pretty good. I play 3 wing leaders. Now, again, we have pretty good amount of rebels. A lot of times I do feel like it does go down as a resource, which is not the worst. It's kind of like that thing. It's like, if you want to make, I kind of use it like if I want to make Sabine a little bit stronger in terms of being able to survive a little bit longer to get off those 1 attack extra pings on the base without having to deal to myself. I'll use this. A lot of times it does go into resources, but also we do play enough rebels to where in the right circumstance, it is a good card just to make your other rebels on the ground stronger. So again, I kept it as a 3 of. And then I have Starwing Scout here. When defeated, if you control the initiative, you get to draw 3 cards. By 3, I mean 2. I don't know why I said 3. But you get to draw 2 cards. It still does 4 damage, which is pretty good for a 3-cost unit. So it's not the best because it only has 1 HP. But if you have the initiative, you also get to draw power off of it. And you do get to do a decent amount of damage with this thing on to your opponent's base because it has 4 power. So those are our space units. Again, nothing too crazy. Again, budget deck. So it's still pretty good lineup. I feel like our ground and space units, though we don't have some of our heavy hitters, which we will go over again in our next segment of the video, it still is a pretty good lineup when it does come to the units. Now let's get into the events. Thank God Precision Fire is a common because this is a really good card anyway. But attack with a unit, it gains Saboteur, and if it's a trooper, +2/+0. You guys know how good this card is, because you get to get that power up, and then you also get to attack with something, and you can get around sentinels this way. I have it as a 3 of. I have this as a 3 of in a lot of my aggression decks anyway, that have a lot of troopers. So it's just a really, really good card. This is where command comes in when it comes to our next event. We have 3 tactical advantages. It's just a way to power up your units. It is a 1 cost, which is the main reason why I play it. It's really, really cheap, and it just powers up your units in what you want to try to do and try to flood the board and get to the enemy's base as quickly as possible. Next up, another staple for aggression decks. As you guys know, keep fighting, ready up a unit with 3 or less power. It's just really good to keep on that sustained pressure on your opponent's base. Being able to attack with the same unit multiple times in a single turn is really good, even if it is only less than 3 power. But you have to understand that a lot of our guys get raid. So you can use 2 tubes, give something raid 2 for the turn, and let's just say it was our Fighters for Freedom. So it just has raid 2. So you get to attack twice with it if you just keep fighting. You attack once with it for 5, and because it still only has 3 power, even though it has raid 2, it can ready up and attack again. So essentially you're getting off 10 damage with that 1 unit with keep fighting, with how this lineup kind of works here. And then also, because you played keep fighting, it also does an extra damage from the Fighters for Freedom's ability. So it's just one of the combos you could do with this, because raid does not raise the power of the card. So that's what the main focus of this deck is. A lot of things do gain raid off of each other, and you can use keep fighting to just keep attacking the opponent's base. I have 3 open fires. This is just kind of like a removal card if I need to finish off a unit. It's just a good way to get scary things off the board. It just deals 4 damage to a unit. It's a pretty good card. So I put it in the budget deck. And the final thing we have to go over are upgrades. We only play 3. Normally, I don't really play upgrades. I play 2 normally in my normal Sabine deck. I decided not to play those ones. I decided to go with Academy Training. Now, Academy Training giving +2/+2 in this deck is pretty good. You can make your really, really weak units strong, even though none of them are like really weak, but you're getting stronger from your other units giving them raid, and then you also add 2 to that is pretty good. And for the cost of 2, it's really cheap. So I decided to play 3 of them in this budget deck. So that's the list. And again, this is not the best Sabine deck. This is just a budget form of the deck. And to kind of showcase it in the Force table when we get there, we're going to be going up against the upgraded Sabine deck. The Sabine deck that has rares and legendaries, and just seeing how the matchup kind of plays out, right? But that's the deck list. Let me know what you guys think of the deck list. Our next part of it, which we normally do, is, hey, these are the cards that you can kind of insert and change up. We're going to be going over the legendaries and rares that I would normally play in a Sabine deck, and that also includes the base. Now, in a normal Sabine deck, I would play double aggression personally. Now, not everyone would play that way. I know some people play Vigilance Sabine, but I kind of prefer Sabine double aggression, and I'll explain why. When it comes to the base, I'm actually going to go off and show both bases. I'm going to show Tarkin Town and then just a normal 30 HP base, mainly because Tarkin Town for Sabine I don't think is necessarily needed. I think that it's okay to, use a 30 HP base to make sure that you can outlive your opponent a little bit easier. I don't think the epic action to deal 3 damage to a non-leader unit that's damaged is really needed with Sabine, so I typically play a 30 HP base when it comes to playing Sabine. But I put both of those up there, showing off, hey, you can go ahead and use this rare base, because again, it's not a budget deck list at this point, but I technically use the Catacombs because I like the extra 5 HP that it provides for you. Now, going into some of the cards that we missed out on because this was a budget deck list, let's go ahead and talk about some of these cards that are really, really good in this deck that I would typically play, right? So Red 3, fantastic card. It has raid 1 itself, but also it gives each one of your heroic units raid 1, which provides that extra damage. It's one of those things that, like, it's just scary when you see it hit the board, because a lot of your units are heroic units and they just get extra damage. And then it works well with keep fighting because, again, it's raid added to them, so they're just getting more attack. So Red 3, definitely, if you're not making a budget Sabine deck list, go ahead and throw this in there. We now go into the next unit. We have K2SO. K2SO has Overwhelm, and when defeated, for each of your opponents, choose 1, either deal 3 damage to that player's base or discard a card from their hand. So that could be good in both ways. Most of the time you are dealing 3 damage to your opponent's base, but also 4 damage with Overwhelm, and it has at defeat, right? So if you have something with 1 HP, and you can go ahead and deal 3 damage to a base over Overwhelm damage, you take yourself out and deal an extra 3 damage on top of that, it can get really, really strong. K2SO is really, really great. It just is a rare card, so it didn't go on the budget list. A card that a lot of people play, I typically play as like a 1 of, is Black 1. It is a legendary card. When played, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards, and then when defeated, you do the same thing. So like usually towards this point in the game, your hand size is really low anyway, so you can go ahead and drop this and get a new set of 3 cards, and it's pretty good. I typically play it as a 1 of, to be honest. It's kind of like that last resort if I really, really need cards. So Black 1, legendary card, definitely pretty solid. A lot of the events, and that's where the hit comes from with the budget deck, right? A lot of the events are rare and legendary in my typical Sabine deck, and they're just really good cards. So let's start off with the first one, Heroic Sacrifice. Draw a card, then attack with a unit. For this attack, it gets +2/+0, and then when this unit deals combat damage, defeat it. So it's just like that last attack. You're losing the unit that you attack with, but you get to draw a card and it deals the extra 2 damage. This also works really well with K2SO because you can go ahead and deal 6 damage to a base. It dies and you deal an extra 3 damage to a base. That combo is always a lot of fun to pull off. So it's definitely a really, really good card. The next card we're going to be going over is For a Cause I Believe In. Reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. For each heroic card revealed among the cards this way, deal 1 damage to your enemy base, which is pretty good. You typically draw like 2 to 3. Sometimes you can get 4. You can get really, really good damage on your opponent's base this way. But then also on top of that, you may discard any of the cards revealed, and then you may put the rest of them on top of your deck in any order. If you don't want any of the 4, like, hey, you know, at this point in the match, I need different cards than these 4, you just discard them all, and then you get to pretty much set yourself up next turn for potentially better plays. Or if there are cards among them that you really, really need next turn, you can set yourself up. It's just a really good card to 1 cycle, deal damage for like an extra bonus on top of that. So it's just a really, really good card. The next 2 cards we're going to go over are the reasons that I play double aggression with Sabine. So first one is Rallying Cry. It's a 3 cost, which is really good. For each friendly unit, not for each friendly unit gains raid 2 this phase. So you get to do 2 damage with every single one of your units this turn. So you use this when you have a pretty full board and you could potentially swing out on your opponent out of nowhere and do a ton of damage. The other card that I play double aggression for is just the card Aggression. It's really good. You get to choose any 2 of these in any order. You get to draw a card, which I typically don't use it for, but I usually choose to ready up a unit with 3 or less power and deal 4 damage to your unit. That's typically the 2 that I choose, but also being able to defeat up to 2 upgrades is really good sometimes because your opponent uses them to make them stronger, and you can kind of try to slow down your opponent who's kind of making their units stronger and using them to maybe get around certain things that you're setting up. So that's also really good. So again, the main reason why I play double aggression Sabine are those 2 cards, so I don't have to pay that aspect penalty on top of those, and having those at 3 costs and 4 costs in this deck is crazy. The final card that I typically run in a normal Sabine deck is Wolf, another Saboteur, but when played and on attack, bases cannot be healed for this phase. It's just really good because it slows down your opponent from being able to heal off the damage that you're trying to deal extremely quickly. And if you play this down when you have a ton of units, and then you get to just attack with all of them and no fear of your opponent gaining HP to heal off any of that damage, and it can potentially be lethal for your opponent. So I think Wolf is just really good to have in a Sabine deck, especially because Iden is a good counter for Sabine. This kind of slows down Iden a little bit. So that's the main reason why I would recommend playing that in a Sabine deck. And again, I could go over command legendaries and rares that you can throw in if you're playing command, but I just wanted to show that I typically play double aggression, and those are the cards rare and up that I typically throw into my Sabine deck, right? I will be doing a normal Sabine deck list at some point. I just want to do a budget deck list and see what you guys think about this concept of doing budget deck lists for multiple leaders, just so it just gives you another option. Like, hey, I don't want to get a bunch of these cards, the higher, probably more expensive cards that are going to be that way. Hey, can I go ahead and make an effective deck with lower rarities? And I think that you can do that with a lot of leaders, probably all the leaders, honestly. So that's why I'm going to start doing some budget deck lists as well. But again, with this deck, how you want to use it, you want to use the other aggression units to make your units stronger through raid and just try to focus on your opponent's base and try to get them knocked out as quickly as possible. And we're going to go ahead and showcase this deck list against a better, I wouldn't say a better deck list, but a higher rarity deck list for Sabine. It's just going to be a mirror match, but it's going to be a little bit different because we're using the budget side of things. And I just wanted to show off that you can still compete against the higher rarity decks. So we're going to go hop over to Force Table. I'll see you guys over there. Okay, we are here in Force Table. We are going to be going up against a Sabine deck with no limitations against our budget deck, Sabine deck. So obviously our opponent is going to have access to a lot better cards than we do, but we're going to showcase that we don't really need those cards to at least keep up. Hopefully we do end up winning this match, but again, showcasing that we can at least keep up is kind of the main goal here. We have a pretty decent hand. I actually am not going to take the mulligan. I'm going to put down... Actually, this is a really good hand. We're going to drop a wing leader. And we're going to drop... Because I think I'm actually turn 2 going to use this wing leader to buff up our agitator. Just because we're going to be able to get Sabine out there. And then we're going to be able to be doing 6 damage into the base. So that's pretty good. Squadron A wing is pretty solid too. I don't think I have time to really play this because it powers up my other aggression cards. So we know our first move here. We're dropping him down. He has Wolf. It doesn't really matter too much unless he decides to go off and attack us next turn, which would be very sad. But we're going to be dropping our wing leader down next turn and then powering him up. So it will take out his Wolf if he chooses to go that way, or I could just flat out go ahead and kill his Wolf. I'm going to drop one of these down. But I do think the initial plan here to go off, make our homie here a little bit stronger. Let's go ahead and attack into the base. We don't have the leader on board, so we're not doing the extra damage, but next turn we will have the leader on board. I will then go ahead and activate my Sabine. And it's kind of interesting to see if he's going to go ahead and attack my unit or into the base. He does choose to go into the base. That's actually preferred. 2 tubes is fantastic. I'm going to keep him. I'm going to get rid of one of my freedoms here. I actually do think I am going to take out his Fighters for Freedom because I don't want... Oh, okay, that could be annoying. But let's go ahead and activate our Sabine. Do the 1 damage onto his base. Okay. Now let's go ahead and bring our Sabine out. He's going to do that. Now we're going to get off a pretty hefty attack onto his base here. Do the extra... I'm just going to do the extra 2 damage into the base. Just because we need to continue to do a ton of damage here. He brings out Sabine. I'm going to put out 2 tubes. I should have probably attacked with Sabine so I don't have to worry about losing Sabine, but I do think that they're just going to all attack into the base. Let's go ahead and attack there. And I do think, yes, he's going to do 4 damage here, but I'm a little bit ahead. And I think that grabbing the initiative here is probably better. Yes, I'm going to be missing out on 2 damage. Might bite me in the long run. But I think if I grab initiative and attack with 2 tubes at the start of next turn, I can then power up my agitator even more and then finish off the game next turn. I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. So we have 2 Spec Force soldiers. We don't have many resources, but I also don't think we really need them. If things kind of hit sideways here, I can maybe just drop down these 3 guys. And I think that's kind of how we're going to go about it. Actually, let's drop one of our Spec Force soldiers just in case the match does go a little bit longer. But again, I'm sticking with the plan. Attacking with 2 tubes into the base. We're going to get 2 damage there. We are then going to go ahead and pop up our agitator. We're going to be taking 4 damage. And we're going to be doing enough here to the point where we're going to be doing it into the base. So we deal the extra 2 damage. We're going to be dealing an extra 6 damage. He's down to 1 HP. He's going to go ahead and attack into my base. And I have enough with either Sabine. I'm going to use Sabine because she is the leader. But that's pretty much kind of how you have to work around. Although I'm not going to lie. So they did have Wolf. He had 4 claws, I believe in. But other than that, there was really nothing in the deck that I had to play around that I didn't have access to, other than Wolf. Wolf was pretty good, and this didn't get played. But either way, you see that we still have options to progress our speed and our aggressive mindset when it comes to Sabine deck, even in a budget deck. So if you don't want to go off and grab all the rares, it might be too much money with the legendaries and all that stuff, you definitely can make Sabine work as a budget deck. So that's what I wanted to showcase here. I will be putting out another Sabine deck that will have access to all the cards and how I typically play Sabine. But if you guys do like the budget deck additions to deck list building, let me know. I'll make some more of them. And yeah, we're gonna go on and get out of here. If you are new here and you're enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe. If you guys are enjoying it, of course, all support is greatly appreciated. And you know, the release for Star Wars Unlimited is right around the corner, so let's get excited for that. And I'll see you guys in the next video.